Hi, greetings. Welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Robbie, yesterday I was out there at the Emerald Island Casino doing a live broadcast with Tim Brooks and Alan Stock, and Alan started with a different number that he uses on his show to promote Sam and Ash Injury Law. Anyway, it got me all muddled up, and I flubbed the number. So I'm just demonstrating to everybody here that I don't have what Biden has. Well, at least not the brain part. Okay, greetings. Again, welcome to the program. Sam at what'srightshow.com. Sam at what'srightshow.com. What a busy news weekend. Now, yesterday, of course, we found out that Biden has cancer, a type of cancer that, of course, is slow moving and would likely have been detected years ago. So more questions than answers being raised by this. Now, I put out a tweet, which I think is the only appropriate response on the day of an announcement of this type. Cancer is a wicked disease, and I don't care who you are, what horrible things you've done, and Biden certainly is not somebody who gets to be exempted from criticism. But when you announce you've got cancer, you're a former president of the United States, I'm not going to pile on with political commentary. So I put out a nice, thoughtful tweet yesterday, but today's a new day. Now we get to take this whole thing apart because, of course, the announcement comes on the heels of what? Axios releasing the entire Hur interview. Robert Hur, special counsel, the guy who was assigned to figuring out whether or not to charge, well, to investigate the documents being strewn about Biden's Delaware garage. And Robert Hur was appointed back in 2023 in January. Now, from the beginning, to me, it was obvious that Hur's appointment was a cleanup job because everybody was out there saying, but wait, you're raiding Mar-a-Lago. You're going after Trump. Okay. You're claiming that Trump, abused and misused and retained confidential and secure documents. So now, of course, they had to go and investigate Biden. And remember Pence, too. That Pence was involved in this, too. But now, at some point during this investigation, Robert Hur sat down for an extensive interview with the then president. Now, the interview happened approximately 10 months in to the investigation. This was on the 8th of October of 2023. So this is approximately a year and a half ago and some change. So Hur sits down. Biden, my understanding is that this occurred inside the Oval Office. And the interview, by the way, was recorded. Yes, was recorded. And the recording was retained in spite of Republicans on the Hill subpoenaing the Department of Justice. This was never turned over, blatantly disregarded at a time when Republicans like Peter Navarro went to jail for disobeying a congressional subpoena. Steve Bannon as well. So anyway, page 245 of the Hur report that ultimately decided that it was inappropriate to charge the sitting president, not necessarily because he did anything wrong, because he did. It actually found that he willfully mishandled classified information. They decided not to prosecute because, quote, we have also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Now, this sentence reverberated through the American political establishment. Remember this? A lot of us at the time said, aha, here it is, the smoking gun. It's proof. I mean, hell, they've got him dead to rights on retaining and mishandling classified documents. But they won't prosecute him because he's non-compos mentis. Well, he doesn't have his wits about him, right? He's just out there drooling. Okay? And there's there was more to it than that, but they basically said it would be difficult to convince, this is another part of that statement, difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him, by then a former president who will be well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires mental state of willfulness. Now, let me put a little bit of a turning asterisk in here just to explain this to you. You know, president is immune from prosecution while in office. A president can the only legal consequence he can face while he is in office is impeachment. I'm not going to belabor that point. I just want to explain that. So if the special counsel here were to have found that, or would have recommended charges, what would have occurred is the charges would not have been filed against Biden until the moment that he left office. So that's what explains that sentence, just so you understand this. Now, well, of course, remember all of the people out there. Remember all of the people that that absolutely lost their minds at any Republican that dared to say that this was dispositive proof that Biden himself had some form of mental incapacity. Everybody piled on against this. The attacks on Robert Hur himself for writing this, for actually absolving Biden of blame, well, refusing to prosecute, it's a very different thing. I mean, he said that he willfully mishandled information, but refusing to prosecute him. At the same time, explaining the why, those calls were shrill. So I want to get into it today because when then we look at the reasons for why Biden is announcing his cancer now, you can think the only reason is purely political, and I want to unpackage a little bit of that as well. So here's the, by the way, I've got some of the audio. I need to play it because my first impression, hearing it late Friday, was that it is in fact worse than I expected. I knew if they were hiding it was bad. I knew it would show Biden, bumbling around. I never believed it would be as terrible as it is. So this is the clip. A lot of folks talking about this one. This is him being asked about a particular point in time. And he's trying to anchor that by a point in time that he had some documents. He's trying to anchor it to events that he might know. And he is just throwing out there events, and they're not all, because people are characterizing this clip to mean that Biden couldn't remember what year his son died. And it's worse than that. If you listen to it right in the very beginning, he's even confused and starts throwing in his son's deployment to Iraq. So listen closely.
Where did you keep papers that related to those things that you were actively working on?
Well, I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying.
Okay, you hear what he says? My son, in this time frame, my son has either, well, he said is, either been deployed or is dying. Either deployed or dying. Well, what year did he was deployed in what, in 2008, Robbie? Is that the right year? I mean, it was September 2009. So now we're off by almost 10 years. I'm just trying to, folks, I'm just trying to explain this. Why it's how absolutely awful this is. He has no idea what decade he is in. Now I'm going to take my time with this and really take you through, because a lot of people are just throwing these clips out there and not taking the time to explain them. But it's bad, and it raises the most important question of all, which is, if Biden was so completely unaware midway through his presidency of his surroundings, of his time, of important events in his past, clearly wasn't in charge of the country, then who was? And are there legal consequences for this? All very important, good questions. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam & Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. I am Nevada's favorite recovering Californian behind the What's Right microphone. Friends, happy to be here with you as always. Monday, busy news day. I guess we'll talk about it a little bit later, but apparently Trump had a 2-hour-long phone call with Vladimir Putin. And there's been some movement, perhaps, on getting the Ukrainian and Russian sides together to enter into discussions to end the war. So I'll give you my thoughts on that in a bit. But first, let's get back to the Biden fiasco. Biden announced yesterday that he has late-stage cancer, the type of cancer, well, it's prostate cancer, but it's spread. It's metastasized into his bone. This is a cancer that, at this stage, according to experts, is terminal. So it's, and it's something that would not have just been discovered now. I mean, for Pete's sake, the president is under regular health screenings. I mean, he's the best medicine in the country. I think of anybody out there, an assigned physician, an entire medical staff. I'm sure blood tests on a regular basis. So this just, to me, yet another component of the cover-up. Now, why the cover-up? The cover-up has to do with the fact that Biden was always, from the very beginning, a placeholder, a vessel for people who wanted power in this country politically, who wanted to get rid of Trump, who wanted to reassert the power of the deep state, and used Biden's, I guess, niceness and whatever qualities he had in 2020. He thought that he could be the guy to get them across the finish line. Now, if you've listened to this program for a while, you know what I said back then, and I've said it throughout. I think Biden they always intended to have him step aside. I always thought this, look, they bring him in the race. He gets a last minute prop up. Clyburn, down in South Carolina, the primaries gives him the boost. I remember Biden was on his campaign was on life support. He was down and out. And then the party rallies behind him, and he gets some important endorsements, and all of a sudden, bam, he's back in the race on the condition that he basically takes the party designate vice president, who is Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris at this time is a huge party favorite, but the party understands that she's not popular. How do they know this? Well, hell, Kamala Harris wasn't even popular during the primary. I mean, the Democratic primary. Well, maybe she raised some money, but she never got past, what was it, 1 or 2%, Robbie? I mean, she really did a crap job. By the way, Robbie, welcome back. We missed you last week. Lakin did great. Be careful about leaving too much, because Lakin did a great job. But I'm just telling you, we did miss you. So, they wanted Kamala did not do very well in the polls, but they loved her because, of course, to the party obsessed with DEI, Kamala checked all the boxes. A black woman, a transformative figure. She was meant to be the first female president. And a Democrat. It'd be history making. They had the whole script written. I'm convinced of it. But they couldn't, Kamala wasn't going to be beating Donald Trump, so they had to pull Biden in. And the only reason why the switcheroo never happened was because Kamala flopped in her role and got actually people on the inside to objectively hate her. So they thought, all right, we got to keep Biden, keep the weekend at Bernie ruse going, keep him propped up. And of course, we would have somehow, get him, get through the next 4 years, maybe even get reelected. Now it's obvious that the cancer and the dementia were so advanced that there was no way to really get it done. And after the terrible, what was it, Robbie? The terrible debate back in June of last year, there's no hiding it. So at any rate, here's the interview. I just started playing it before the break. This has been released. Axios has the full tape of the Robert Hur interview. This happened back in October of 23. So in this time period, Biden is, by the way, deciding he's going to run again. This is what's wild to me. He's literally, his family, Jill Biden and Hunter and the brother, James, the kids, everybody is going, yeah, Dad, it's a great idea. We think you should run. These are people that were so addicted to the perks of office of the president, Air Force One, the White House, Camp David, security, all the stuff, that they were perfectly willing to subject their cancer-riddled father, dementia-addled man, subject him to a re-election campaign just so they could keep their goodies. So here he's trying to figure out what the hell he was doing. This is Joe Biden, again, back in October of 2023. And he goes, well, wait, 2017, let's see, this time frame, my son's being either deployed or is dying. Bo was deployed in 2009 and died in 2015. So listen to what how he continues to meander here.
And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period, except the president. Not a mean thing to say. I mean, he just thought that she had a better shot of winning the presidency than I did. And so I hadn't at this point, even though I'm at Penn, I hadn't walked away from the idea that I might run for office again. If I ran again, I'd be running for president. And so what was happening though, when did Bo die? May 30th, 2018. Was it 2015 he died? 2015. I think it's 2015.
I'm not sure the months are, but I think that was.
Yeah.
That's right, Mr. President.
This is just awful. And again, there's still people out there, they're like, well, he just didn't remember the exact date. I don't know. You must not have kids. When people say that, I mean, there's nothing worse than your child predeceasing you. I've heard this from every person who's ever lost a kid, no matter how old. You remember that date, that year, okay? And then to be all over the map between Bo deploying, Bo getting sick and dying, and his actual death date. I mean, to me, this is just atrocious, right? No two ways about it. And yet, at this time that this was going on, people were defending him. It's the worst part. In fact, I've got the receipts here. When we come back, Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. All right, greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Reach me at my email, sam@whatsrightshow.com, and of course on X, formerly known as Twitter, at What's Right Sam. And I'm great to, by the way, see so many of you on there and interacting. If you put comments on my posts, I'll respond to you. I love to see you there. So please, if you don't have an X account, sign up. It's free. All you need is an email address. Supporting Elon Musk. Let's do that and help the cause of free speech. So get on X, Twitter, what it was called, used to be called, and give me a follow there, and look forward to interacting with you all. So Biden, the interview dropped, then suddenly the announcement about the cancer. Obviously, my best wishes are with the president and his family. Cancer is awful, folks. I mean, what do you want me to say here? I mean, this is awful. But I absolutely think there is a special place in Hades for Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, James Biden, the entire Biden cabal, for placing their needs ahead of their fathers. Biden should never have run in 2020. And he certainly should never have run for re-election in 2024. It's madness. It's extremely likely that the cancer was already present when he first ran in 2020, and it is virtually impossible that it had not been discovered by the time he decided to run for re-election in 2024. Those are just facts. Doctors are out there opining about it, but I'm just letting you know. And I think it's been announced now, if I could, forgive me if I'm cynical with these people, right? But you got to be. I think it's being announced now because, this audio dropped of the Robert Hur interview that shows that Biden's absolutely out there, has no idea what's going on. And by the way, it's not about protecting Biden. But let me make something very clear. It's not about protecting. This is entirely about protecting everybody inside the administration who worked there, who was in the building, from any criticism that they absolutely are due, and more importantly, legal scrutiny for the decisions made by the president. And this is, I got into it a little bit yesterday when I was on air with Alan and Tim Brooks. I let me say this. We're in this case. It's not a case yet, but this legal, call it concern. What happens if the president is not mentally competent? And we have proof that he was not mentally competent when he did X, Y, and Z. For example, Joe Biden put out a series of commutations and pardons in the last final hours, days of his presidency. Do those pardons have legal merit if it can be proven that the president didn't know that he did it? If we can prove that the president did not have capacity. So we lawyers look at this all the time in the subject of contracts. That's not an area of practice that I'm in, but I can tell you that, it's black letter law, established law, that if somebody is mentally incompetent whatever contract they agree to or enter into is null and void. That's just the law. Now, it gets a little bit interesting here when you are dealing with the power of the presidency. And this is something that hasn't been tested yet. And how would it get tested? Very simple. I saw today there was an announcement from the Trump people that Ed Martin, who was supposed to be the U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C., who now has a high up role in the Department of Justice, Ed Martin was scuttled right by the rhino Republicans like Tom Tillis in the Senate. Well, Martin's coming back with a vengeance, and one of his tasks, I don't know if you saw this, Robbie, one of his tasks is to review all of the pardons that Biden issued that were signed by an auto pen. So Biden's in the corner drooling. The auto pen is writing the pardons, blah, blah, blah. And does he even know what was being done? So that would be the legal question. And how would you test it? Very simply. Trump, and by extension his Department of Justice, would decide to file criminal charges against Hunter Biden. Or just seek a sentencing in Hunter Biden's tax conviction, right? In that case. And Hunter Biden's legal team would say, wait, not so fast. We have a pardon here. We have a real pardon. Look at this. And the court would say, oh yeah, we do have a legal pardon. And the Department of Justice would come in and say, well, actually, it's not a real pardon because the president didn't actually sign it. And we can prove that with beyond any reasonable doubt that the president didn't know what day it was when these pardons were supposedly signed. That issue will end up at the Supreme Court. I think if I'm a betting man, Trump's going to push it. This issue will end up at the Supreme Court. I'm not going to sit here today. It's for another day. We can speculate how it's going to turn out. But that's how this issue will be brought to a head. And mark my words, it will be. They're going to play proof. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to simply play portions of this Robert Hur interview. He doesn't even know what year he left office as vice president. Here's another snippet, and I'll get to all of the terrible things Democrats said about Robert Hur in a minute. But you got to listen to this. This is just unbelievable.
What's happened in the meantime is that Trump gets elected in November of 2017? 2016. All right. So, why do I have 2017 here?
That's when you left office, in January of 2017.
Yeah, okay. But that's when Trump gets sworn in.
Right.
January.
Right. Correct.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's called the 2016 election. You and I follow politics. Yes, we talk all the time. The election happens in 2016, and then inauguration happens in January of the following year. It's like if you've spent your entire life in politics, if you've been vice president for 2 terms and are serving currently as president, do you not know this? You know how far you're gone if you don't know what the election years are, the presidential election years? Yeah, this is a mistake average Americans who follow the news on a semi-regular basis would never make, let alone people who are in office, who were elected, perhaps, as president. This is wild. So anyway, the Hur report comes out. Hur says, this guy that you can hear on the tape asking the questions says, well, yeah, nice guy, grandfatherly, forgetful old man. He mishandled classified documents, but there's no way we're going to get a conviction. So, what did Kamala Harris say? This comes out. There's a press conference after the release of the Hur report. And by the way, this, I mean, the Hur report comes out, not the audio. They played hide the ball on that. And here's what Harris said at the time.
The comments that were made by that prosecutor, gratuitous, inaccurate, and inappropriate. The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated.
I'd put this woman right into jail. Her level of deceit knows no limits. And she had the responsibility, the constitutional responsibility, to remove Biden from office when he clearly should not have been president. This man had nuclear codes. Unbelievable. It's absolutely wild. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre. A reporter asks her, this is, remember, the spokes thing of the Biden administration after Jen Psaki left the building. And Karine Jean-Pierre is asked to get an opinion from a doctor on Biden. And, you know, and of course she goes, well, Hur isn't a doctor. He can't make this connection or these opinions.
Doctor, when can we talk to the president's doctor, and how come they haven't been asked to come out here and talk with us, given the Hur report that challenges the president's mental fitness?
So look, just to speak to the Hur report really quickly, Special Counsel Hur is, as far as I remember, is obviously a Republican, a prosecutor. He's not a medical doctor. He's just not. It's not for him to speak to. It's just not. And you've heard from over the past couple of days since the report has been out, you've heard from legal experts from across the ideological spectrum, even former Attorney General, and he says, and they have come out to say that the stuff in this report that is capturing all of your attention right now is just wrong. It's flatly wrong. It is inappropriate. It is gratuitous. And so going to leave that there, and it is obviously up for a medical doctor to decide on that. But look, I have said the medical doctor, the president's doctor, is going to do a physical. He's going to, and he has always put forth in the last 2 years a detailed memo on the president's obviously medical physical, and so I'm just going to leave it there. I don't have anything else to add. Go ahead, Jared.
The facility by which these people all lied is astounding. Although it got a little tricky there at the end, right? Karine Jean-Pierre ran out of ways to keep stating the flatly untrue. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Great to be with you. Happy Monday. Joe Biden on his way out, it seems. They've come clean with this. His cancer diagnosis, advanced late stage prostate cancer, apparently in response to the absolute disastrous audio of his interview with Robert Hur from 2023. I mean, this is just absolutely horrible stuff. I've played some of the clips. It's bad, and it's actually worse than I expected it to be. Now, there are people that worked with Biden, that knew him, that interacted with him, that lied. Karine Jean-Pierre being one of them. Here is Hur back in February of 2024. It's a White House press briefing. And it just, here's a question from a reporter. Look at this.
Committee chairs have sent a letter to the Attorney General asking for the release of the transcripts and recordings related to Hur's investigation. Given your insistence that the special counsel's characterizations of the president's demeanor were inaccurate, are you eager for this material to be made public? Do you support their release?
Well, look, and I just want to be really clear, it's not just us. There was also a bipartisan voices and illegal experts who have said it was flatly wrong, right? It was gratuitous. It was inappropriate how that was characterized in the special counsel's report. For any other specific on the transcript or anything related to that, the letter, I would certainly refer you to my colleagues.
So you won't say, given that you think the report is flatly wrong and gratuitous, you can't say if you want the material to be made public, if the American people should
what
see
I can
this?
say, they're discussing it, they're looking at it, there's a process that's involved, and so the White House counsel obviously has taken these questions from all of you, and so they're looking into it. I just don't have anything further to say about that.
Well, so we dispute everything that is every characterization of the interview with Joe Biden. We dispute what Robert Hur said or wrote about it in his report. Well, will you release the audio then? Will you release it and let us listen to it and we can corroborate that? Well, we're not going to do that. It was then that we knew it was all a scam. But the handmaidens of the Biden administration and the mainstream media were quick to help out. Here's Joe Scarborough trashing the report, joining a cacophony of media voices doing the same.
I've said it for years now. He's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically, because he's been around for 50 years. And, you know, I don't know if people know this or not. Biden used to be a hothead. Sometimes that Irishman would get in front of the reasoning. Sometimes he would say things he didn't want to say. This is, and I don't really, you know what, I don't really care. Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
Well, it wasn't the truth. And by the way, Joe Scarborough knew very well at this time it wasn't the truth. They were covering for Biden in the midst of the re-election campaign. This is back in early 2024. Republican primaries were in full swing. Trump was barreling through, winning. I think around this time, you can see it there on the Chiron. Nikki Haley was dropping out of the race. So there's all this stuff happening. And what was the context? Stop Trump. Now, every one of these people in the media and in the government sacrificed the entirety of their credibility just to stop Trump. Now, I can understand why the people working for Joe Biden inside the White House were lying to cover up for their boss. Why? Well, they were all living high on the hog because they were the ones that were actually president. Karine Jean-Pierre was probably more the president of the United States than Joe Biden, okay? She probably had more say in meetings than Joe Biden did, okay? So I get it. They're self-motivated. Was it wrong? Yes. Was it illegal? Very possibly, yes. But the media? If anybody ever tries to tell you that the media is suffering because, well, there's a bunch of right-wingers on X, on Twitter, that are sounding off on media and lying about the media and they're eroding the media's credibility, then that's just more of the same lying that we've grown accustomed to. This will forever be the greatest stain on journalism in the history of journalism until they do the next worst thing. Okay? I'm not saying this is the end of it. I'm just saying this is worse than what happened during Watergate, the Vietnam War, communism. You could keep going. So we can't let this go. We can't let this go, right? Now, what is interesting to me, and I have to point this out. It's interesting to me is that this cancer announcement, there was a moment where Biden, flubbed or whatever, but admitted to having cancer back in 2022, in the summer of 22, when this was in Massachusetts. He was talking about renewable energy, and he was mentioning pollutants in the air and how basically everybody, including him, now has cancer back from growing up in Delaware. Did you miss this when it happened? I think I did.
And because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer, and why can't for the longest time Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation.
Well, he said it back in 22. The cover-up here of the president's health is astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. And I'll say, I have my thoughts. I don't think we should announce to the world what the president's health is, especially if it's bad. I don't think our adversaries need to know that. But he never should have run for re-election. That much is clear. And that is a huge part of the story. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Greetings and welcome to the What's Right show, second hour of radio excellence here on KXNT News Talk 840. Yes, Sam Mirejovsky behind the What's Right microphone, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. My voice, my throat, I don't know what it is. My gosh, I think I blame the weather. Robbie, I blame the weather. Tell you, it gets hot, it gets cold. It was windy this weekend. I don't know, something's interfering with my vocal cords striking their usual sonorous notes. So I'm doing my best over here. Forgive me. Now, I need to mention this because been a rough morning for me. Very, very sad to hear. Scott Adams, who is, of course, the Dilbert creator and is an absolutely unparalleled thinker. I love his independence of thought. He is a hugely influential person and someone who, during the COVID madness, spoke truth to power and was a fresh voice fighting against orthodoxy, a political groupthink that dominated much of COVID discourse. So Scott Adams today announced a deeply personal bit of news that he apparently has the same cancer that Joe Biden has, that his cancer too has spread, metastasized into the bone, and that he has but months to live. So obviously our strongest of thoughts and prayers with Scott Adams and his family. It's absolutely devastating. And rather selfishly find myself here thinking what we will do without him. Now, Scott Adams obviously has kept this to himself. It's been private. I understand, right, that people keep their medical trials and tribulations private. The problem is, what is private when you're the president? You're not entitled to these same levels of medical privacy. And more importantly, the people that surround the president have a duty to the Constitution and under federal law to see to it that the presidency's in good hands, and they can't misrepresent the president's good health, for example, and ability to fulfill job functions, particularly when they're under oath. So a lot of people have been asking me, okay, Sam, so obviously Biden, A, was afflicted with cancer, and B, perhaps more troubling, we're listening to this tape of his interview with Robert Hur, had some level of significant cognitive decline while in the Oval Office, while in the White House. So what do you make of this? Now, look, there's a whole slew of politicians whose credibility is toast. Everyone from Kamala Harris to Gavin Newsom, who famously in July of 2024, during the thick of the presidential contest, after Biden's debate performance, told CNN President Biden has been a strong leader, and any talk of his cognitive decline is overblown. It's a real distraction from the issues at hand. James Clyburn in May of 25 never saw anything, right? Joe Biden was unable to do a job. Chris Coons, Nancy Pelosi, Mark Warner, Representative Ro Khanna. And then, obviously, you had the state bureaucrats like Anthony Blinken, Merrick Garland, Lloyd Austin, Javier Becerra, okay? Now, what do you make of this? What legal obligations did any of these people have? Now, the media, I'm setting the media aside here for a minute because, they don't have a legal obligation to tell the truth. The First Amendment allows for the media to blatantly lie to you. And by the way, that's good. We do not want to have the government come in and enforce truth, okay? Because the government's truth, we know, may not actually be the truth. So it's okay that the media lies. We just have to know. And of course, you and I, we know it. But the question is, was there any fraud or misrepresentation? Did staff, advisors, for example, in the White House, knowingly misrepresent the president's capacity to Congress, for example, or maybe even to the public, while they themselves benefited from having the ability to make decisions on the president's behalf because he was unable to make them? This could be a theoretic charge of fraud under the federal code. You have to prove intent, that that this was beyond just legitimate advising and it became manipulation. Evidence of bad faith or coercion. One of the questions here would be, of course, there's immunity and privilege. So a lot of these conversations are privileged, all right? This shields the manipulators. There's abuse of power of ethics. My brain's going here as a lawyer looking at these issues, Robbie. Imagine for a minute. Yes, I absolutely want everyone who assisted in this fiasco to be held accountable. But, and here's a big but, the risk of stripping immunities that are important to the office of president, to the presidency under Article 2, and protections could erode the power of the presidency. So what might seem like something that righteously needs to happen today could later be used as a weapon against Trump once he leaves office, for example, to try to pry open and get into conversations that he had, communications that he had with his staff while in the White House. We don't want to allow this to happen. It was one of my principal concerns in the interregnum period between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0, Trump 45, Trump 47. This is something that the courts desperately tried to do, and some courts allowed it to happen. Privileged conversations between the president and his advisors were hacked, okay, by radical left-wing judges. This is unacceptable. It's constitutionally not okay. So you always have to think, folks, you and I, we have to be smarter than the Democrats. The Democrats never think further than just what's right in front of them. Okay, here, right in front of me. I want to get Trump. I'm going to get Trump. So they do everything to get Trump. Consequences be damned. they end up exposing themselves to huge problems. So much in the same vein of things, I'm concerned, honestly, about cracking that kind of privilege and getting into it. A flat out elder abuse. I mean, can you imagine if this was, pause here for a minute. Imagine for a moment that you've got an elderly parent, a grandparent, a family friend, and this family friend is a person of means. This family friend has dementia, enough of dementia to not know most of the time what's really going on. And you manipulate this friend, or somebody near this person manipulates the person into transferring on a regular, course of business, certain assets that person has to others. I mean, this would be grounds for going to prison for 20 plus years. Okay. Big deal. People have gone to jail for less. So, I don't know. I literally think there are a lot of ways to get at this, but you would have to sort of hack into the, into the privilege. Where I think, Robbie, would be the best way to go about it, and there have been testimonies given to Congress about the president's state. I think Merrick Garland ought to be prosecuted for willfully disobeying a congressional subpoena, and he should end up in jail for as long as Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro did. Yes. And 2, I think absolutely for any times that these people lied under oath, big no-no, big problem. They absolutely should be held accountable for that. So, I'm just saying there are ways to get at this. Well, and by the way, top-level Democrats are already starting to freak out about all the people that they know could potentially be in the line of fire. This is going to be a big issue, folks. Trust me, we're going to follow this for some time. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. The What's Right Show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam & Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky at What's Right Show. Actually, the email is just Sam at What's Right Show, but I'm on the What's Right Show Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. So obviously people are scrambling with this news that Biden is, he didn't know where he was with the release of the Axios tape. And one of the things that's interesting is that the talking heads out there are already suggesting that now that we know that he has cancer, we ought to go easy on him. Look at this setup here. David Axelrod getting a nice little intro from Sarah Sidner yesterday on CNN. Exactly this. All right. So the point that they're making.
His medical condition now, his announced medical condition now, do you believe that silences or delays a lot of conversations about his, last year and a half of his presidency for now?
Yeah, well, I think those conversations are going to happen, but they should be more muted and set aside for now as he's struggling through this.
Now, David Axelrod was an outspoken critic. He wasn't a critic of Biden's, but he definitely would not be the biggest water carrier, for Team Biden. But he's certainly going to protect the people inside the Biden administration. These are important Democrats. He's also terrified of the Biden agenda coming apart. Can you imagine if all of his executive orders and pardons got invalidated? It'd be wild. Now, one thing that I think is important to consider, and I said this is without precedent, and it is largely, except Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, and some of his post-stroke orders were questioned but never legally voided. I wasn't going to do this, Robbie. My prediction is that when this issue, I think when, not if, when this issue gets up to the Supreme Court, they are not going to overturn anything that Biden did. And the reason for it is that if that were to happen, the standard for overturning presidential executive orders would be an unparalleled constitutional crisis. And I'm going to take a step further here. One thing that is extremely important to note is it's the Democrats that always talk about the constitutional crisis Republicans are causing. And I'm telling you, the biggest constitutional crisis of our lifetime is going to be this. Absolute madness. Now, I wanted to get also here, I'm going to switch gears. I want to get into the interview that Kash, Patel, and Dan Bongino gave to Maria Bartiromo on Fox. Now, this had been recorded before James Comey's 8647 comments. We all know what he was doing. But there were a couple moments in this interview that I thought were very interesting. Okay? And I want to get to, well, the first one was dealt with the Trump assassination. And Bartiromo asked Dan Bongino, who is now the deputy director of the FBI, if he was surprised by anything that he's learned.
Are we going to be surprised at what you learned?
You know what, Maria? Kash is not kidding. We've been personally briefed extensively on every single detail, nugget, tendril of this case. One is actively in court right now, so out of respect for the case, it's probably more appropriate that I stay quiet on that. However, I'm not going to tell people what they want to hear. I'm going to tell you the truth, and whether you like it or not is up to you. If there was a big explosive there, right? Given my history as a Secret Service agent and my personal friendship as a director does with the president, give me one logical, sensible reason we would not have. If you can think of one, there isn't. In some of these cases, the there you're looking for is not there. And I know people, I get it. I understand. It's not there. If it was there, we would have told you.
You know, I think I believe him, Robbie. We haven't talked about this. Maybe we'll do it in the break. I believe him. By the way, the same thing he said essentially about the Epstein suicide. There's a lot of people very invested in the whole Epstein didn't kill himself. The Clintons have had a lot of suspicious suicides, but, you know, could Epstein have killed himself? You know, I've always been very circumspect about this. I'm mostly always attacked this sort of tongue in cheek. So listen to what Kash Patel says on that.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I believe him. I mean, I do. I don't. I think they're disappointed that there wasn't more there. So I do. Now, where it does get interesting is on the subject of January 6th. Listen, now this is pretty carefully worded here, but listen to what was said here.
What actually happened on January 6th?
So there is, as It seems that I find myself in a similar situation as Russiagate. Because on January 6th, in the prior Trump administration, I was the chief of staff to the Department of Defense. And I spent 4 years and a minor fortune litigating the truth because people politicized what actually happened on January 6th. And we now know unequivocally that President Trump lawfully authorized the deployment of National Guard, and me, as the head of the Office of Secretary of Defense, with the Secretary of Defense, took that action. When it finally came in, because it had to have the governor and mayor of D.C.'s approval on it. That's the way the law works. And once it finally came in on January 6th, remember, we offered to them days beforehand, and they rejected it. And we've put out the letters, and your show has done great coverage showing how it was rejected. We mobilized the fastest cold start in Washington, D.C. since World War II, and the largest occupation of D.C. by the National Guard since the American Revolution. That's what happened on January 6th. But what you and your viewers want to know, now that we've beat back that disinformation campaign with actual truth, is what was the FBI doing?
And I do want to know that, right? This is now it. Like, what role did the FBI play? Were there feds on the ground? Because I'm willing to understand that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel have not seen any evidence suggesting that, well, you know, Epstein didn't kill himself, or that the attempts on Trump's life weren't just what they appeared. But this part of it, I am very keenly interested in. When we come back, let me play what the rest of this tape says, because it's a fascinating deal. This was aired just yesterday on Fox News. Maria Bartiromo. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT, the What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the program. Yes, I'm losing my voice again. Absolutely wild. I want to mention something that happened over the weekend. Obviously, just absolutely devastating that we had a major shooting at the LVAC here in Vegas on, North Rainbow and Lake Mead. This is the Las Vegas Athletic Club. A guy goes in and begins shooting. It appears that he was targeting someone. Anyway, he comes running out of the building with a gun and is shot and killed by a what appeared to be a Metro officer. Obviously, Metro and all the first responders here are the heroes of the day. To me, it's all on video. It looks like a clean shooting. But my only commentary on this is, almost as quickly as the story began to develop, I was getting calls from people in the business telling me of all the cappers out there. You know what a capper is? Somebody who is going out there on behalf of personal injury attorneys and looking to sign up clients in big cases. In this particular case, this horrific shooting. And these people basically just turn around and sell these cases to unscrupulous, shady lawyers. Now, this is a felony. It's absolutely against the law. I don't do any of this. No one here at Sam and Ash does any of this. And there are many great firms in Las Vegas who don't touch this stuff. But I can tell you absolutely beyond any shadow of a doubt that there are some big advertising firms that do this and have built fortunes on this. You know who you are, and shame on you. You imagine trafficking in someone's loss and misery? This is everything that people despise about ambulance chasing personal injury lawyers. It makes me absolutely sick. So something you need to be aware of, and spread the word. Tell all of your friends this. You never just go and talk to a guy that refers you someplace. That guy is making money off you. If somebody shows up at the scene of your accident, pops up at your door, sends you an unsolicited text. Hey, I can help you. I know the best lawyer in town. That guy is a capper. That guy belongs in jail. And by the way, if you are solicited for a case at another firm this way, if this happened to you, you actually deserve compensation. And we are, by the way, Ashley and I are taking these cases now. I'm going after these mother effers that are doing this. And you're entitled to damages. You can void the contract and get money from the unscrupulous, shady lawyer that did this to you. I'm just letting you know. 702-820-1234, Sam and Ash Injury Law. We don't play those games. People come to us because we're good. People know that we're good. We advertise. We don't pay people for cases. This is absolutely disgusting. And obviously, my hearts go out to anybody affected by this horrific, horrific incident here over the weekend. All right, January 6th, I know I want to get to this clip because it's just a moment where Maria Bartiromo asks Kash Patel about January 6th. What was the role of the FBI? Was the FBI involved? Kash Patel takes a breath, and here's the answer.
Well, we got answers coming. We just found a trove of information, and it's on its way to Capitol Hill right now. And they've asked, and they're getting them, and you're getting answers on January 6th. You're getting answers on what sourcing was utilized, what money was utilized, how many assets were utilized, who made those decisions. You're getting it. We can only control the FBI, but you're getting it from the FBI.
Were there FBI agents undercover egging people on?
Yes.
Like I said, that answer is coming.
Yes.
And it's on its way to Congress.
You're about to, I saw it. I saw the portfolio of information. We dug far and wide to find it. And I'm pretty sure now we have a conclusive, definitive answer. But you and the public are going to have it. You're going to see it in writing over to Capitol Hill. But I just want to be sure we're clear, having been an agent and a police officer. There is a difference between an agent. I know you know this. I don't mean to sound ridiculous. An agent, meaning a trained GS 1811 federal agent, and a source or an asset. There's a difference. So when you see the material, which I promise you is coming, again, I'm not asking you to trust us. I know it's coming because I saw it yesterday. When you see it, I just want you to understand that it's not an apology for anything.
Thank you.
But there's a difference between agents and assets. Yeah. And I just hope when people put that information out there, they make the distinction. Not that it's better or worse, but there's a distinction there.
It's a very important distinction.
And I want to level set here. I want the American public to go back and look at what our predecessors stated to Congress under oath. Yes. That there were no FBI sources utilized in and around January 6th. I'm going to leave it at that.
People are going to jail. This is great. Remember it? Remember when Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray were asked about this under oath in Congress? Now, some of the answers were very circuitous and carefully worded, but I think it constitutes lying to Congress. We'll see what the evidence is. But you see the difference here between being asked about Epstein. They're like, yeah, it was a suicide. Okay, enough. Moving on. Now tell us about January 6th. I can't say now. Stay tuned. We are sending a trove of documents to D.C., to the White House, you guys, and to Congress, to the House Oversight Committee. Giddy yup. This is going to be extraordinary. Oh my gosh, unbelievable. So this is good stuff, right? Things are beginning to happen on this front. And let me just state something that I've said a few times now, and on various appearances and whatnot. I've always said that I think oh my gosh, what's Pam Bondi doing? What's Kash Patel doing? Calls at 120 days in to be premature. Focus your ire if you have any, and I do. I'm pissed at the congressional Republicans. I'm pissed at the rhinos. I'm pissed at Tom Tillis. I'm upset with with John Cornyn. But Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi, they've barely had a chance to find their way around the oven. Remember, a lot of the people that are in these agencies, in the DOJ and at the FBI, are part of the resistance. So they're having to. It's not just a matter of walking in. Okay, say, okay, this is what we're going to do. The people on the inside are actively fighting this. It's a very important point. So we just have to take our time with this. Now, I mentioned, and I'll get to this here just after the break, but I want to mention that Trump and Putin had a meeting, or a phone call, 2 hours, announced this morning. What could this mean for the future of the war? And what does it mean for the future of American strength in Europe? Because a lot of leftists right now are saying America has given up its place as a power player in Europe. And I would subjectively offer you my opinion here, humbly, that I think that's far from true. I'll explain what I mean when we come back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Greetings and welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. All right, folks, listen to me. We got some good news, I think, from Europe. Trump today announcing this morning that he'd had a 2-hour-long conversation with Vladimir Putin. Now, a 2-hour-long chat. Remember, this, I would say, would be the equivalent of, let's say, a 45-minute or an hour-long chat if you and I were having a conversation. And that is because while Putin is suspected to have good English, he never uses it. He always speaks through a translator. So Trump says something, gets translated. Putin says something. Of course, I doubt Trump's Russian is very good, so, it gets translated to Trump. So the whole thing gets slowed down. All right. I think it's a real-time translation, but there's a delay. There's a lag. Nonetheless, a 2-hour-long conversation is a good conversation to have. And Trump in his announcement said, look, only the Ukraine side and Russian side can really work this out. I want to facilitate this. No one to date, not President Macron from France, not the dictator in Turkey, okay, not the clowns that run Germany. Today it's a guy named Merz, used to be Angela Merkel, and others, idiot globalists, not Keir Starmer of Great Britain. Nobody's been able to get Putin on the phone and actually talk to him and engage with him meaningfully. Putin, for his part, confirmed that the talk occurred, that it was 2 hours, and said something along the lines that it was helpful. That's all we can ask. Peace begins with conversations. It's very important. By the way, Friday, Fox News with Brett Baer, Trump said this on Russia-Ukraine, and it was, I think, fairly accurate.
Don't forget, this was supposed to end in 1 week. And if he didn't get stuck in the mud with his army tanks all over the place, they would have been in Kiev in about 5 hours.
Well, I know everybody. Everybody that they did get stuck in the mud and equipment failed. This is Trump being a little bit funny. The Russian military had enormous setbacks, and he's really what Trump is trying to do is, look, on one hand, give Russia incentives to end the war. For example, trade with the U.S. Let's open it back up. Let's have you re-engage with the international community. Let's get you were debanked. Let's get you rebanked. Let's all the stuff, right? Huge incentives. And on the other hand, going, hey, Hey, everybody said, oh, Putin's got the biggest, baddest army around. He made it to Kiev. He was supposed to be there. I said this. I remember when the war broke out, I flat out believed that, that it would, I worried that Ukraine was toast. And then it all fell apart. You think that the Russian military today is in better shape than it was the week of the invasion? Delusional. I mean, maybe in some ways, right? I mean, but again, I mean, just think of the number of people they've lost and equipment they've lost. Absolutely crazy. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this on Sean Hannity's program, also on Friday, about ending the war.
Yeah, it's my assessment. I think it's the president's assessment. By the way, I think he said publicly today that the only way we're going to have a breakthrough here, nothing's going to happen at this point. Given everything we know after months of working on this, nothing's going to happen until President Trump sits across the table from Vladimir Putin and puts it on the line and puts it on the table. I think that's the only chance we have at peace at this point. Given everything we've seen over the last few weeks, there's been talks, there's been negotiations, there's been trips and meetings. But in the end, I think we've reached the conclusion, and rightfully so, as the president has, that the only way this is going to happen, if it has a chance to happen, the only way it happens is as the president directly engages with Vladimir Putin. So I don't know what the date or the place of that is yet, but that's really the only chance at this point. And I think there are a lot of countries here that would privately share that assessment as well.
Well, starts with a phone call. And the phone call happened 4 days after Marco Rubio gave this interview. So things are happening. There's progress. And then, speaking of diplomacy, remember all the scuttlebutt that Trump didn't go to Israel, that Trump, is mad at Netanyahu and that they're on the outs and that Trump is going to support a Palestinian state and all this stuff? Well, here is Trump on Friday in that same Bret Baier interview on Fox News, answering the question of whether he's frustrated with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Are you frustrated at all with Prime Minister Netanyahu?
No, look, he's got a tough situation. You have to remember there was an October 7th that everyone forgets. It was one of the most violent days in the history of the world, not the Middle East, the world, when you look at the tapes. And the tapes are there for everyone to see. So he has that problem. That problem should have never happened. Now, if I were president, that problem wouldn't have happened because Iran had no money. They were stone cold broke.
Yeah. Does this sound like somebody who suddenly is in bed with Hamas? Look, you can't believe everything that you hear, right? Now, we as America, through Donald J. Trump, just went through a Middle Eastern blitzkrieg, okay? Stopping, visiting friends and some, former foes, if you will, sitting down even with the new leader of Syria, engaging in conversations about business and about trade, about interconnecting our economies. What country, following all of that, is back on top? And then, following that, Trump comes home for the weekend, maybe plays a round of golf. I don't know. The man deserved a break, that's for sure. Gets on the phone first thing in the office Monday morning to get a conversation going with Vladimir Putin. And actually talks to Putin for 2 hours. Look, I don't know. Not everything is solved through war. I don't know what do the war hawks want to do here? What do the Boltons of the world want? What's their solution? Bomb Moscow, drop a nuke on Russia? And not everything can be solved in this way. And maybe, just maybe, Trump's way of talking directly to people and hammering at them is something that can get more done more quickly with less bloodshed and destruction of treasures and property and et cetera. Than what all of the neocons and globalist Democrats would rather do. Remember, under the previous administration, all we did was send them millions upon millions of dollars. We threw good money after bad, all in an effort to help save Ukraine. Well, it all turned out to be bull crap because the money we sent, half of it, I'm convinced, diverted right back into Democratic Party pockets. And the rest came with so many strings attached that really Ukraine couldn't even do anything with it. They could protect their borders, but they couldn't strike into Russian territory, all sorts of ridiculous rules. And at the end of the day, did we actually sell them equipment that could get the job done? No. It was all talk. It was all baloney. Anyone that tries to tell you, and I say this, I'm going to be, by the way, the show coming to you from Europe for the next 10 days because I'm headed back over there. And I'll tell you, I'm going to talk to people on the ground. Flat out. Anyone that says that U.S. foreign policy, the U.S. as a whole, as a country, as a nation, is less respected in the world now that Trump is president is absolutely dead wrong. We aren't bombing anybody, but we're talking to people. This is good stuff. It's how it ought to be. And if Trump can actually bring Putin and Zelensky together and end the conflict and get them to close it out, then all of the silly little world leaders that may or may not have been snorting coke on the train on the way back from Kiev will all be that much more ridiculous for it. They couldn't get it done. By the way, you saw the latest. Keir Starmer came and said, oh, we're going to give you some missiles. And then like 4 days later, it's like, oh, well, actually, never mind. Trump at least means what he says. He's very deliberate in his choice of words. But he's, it's the kind of plain speaking that matters. All right, folks, email me with questions, comments, concerns. I will work on getting my voice back. Sam@whatsrightshow.com is my email. On Twitter, you can follow my journey on X. I'll be on there at What's Right Sam. I'll keep you posted. Keep the faith, folks. We got this. Everything's going to be okay. Don't forget, this hour of the program is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law because you deserve what's right.